5 practical and actionable strategies that you can use for managing burnout. And this is both for those among us who may experience burnout or stress, but as importantly, if not more, we're going to be offering up strategies for managers and employers on how to prevent burnout and stress among their teams and direct reports. Lucky for us, Amy Newman has once again joined us in studio. She is Senior Lecturer Emerita at the S.C. Johnson College of Business and also faculty co-author of the Servant Leadership Cornell Certificate Program. And note that a good deal of what we're going to be covering today actually maps to the skills and the competencies taught in the courses that make up this certificate program. So viewers, heads up, we're going to be sharing URL for that a couple times throughout the show. So if what we're covering today interests you and you'd like to learn more, check out that certificate program. In addition, Amy's got a new book out, congratulations, called Recovery at Work, Using 12-Step Principles for Professional Success. And it also offers practical examples for applying tools to overcome stress and burnout at work and how to build a better career and life. Amy, welcome back to the studio. It's so good to have you back.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
Yeah, you bet. Viewers, thank you for joining us. We're not going to be taking your questions today. We're going to just kind of go through this thing. So I want to thank you for joining us, and note that this is being recorded currently, and after the live presentation, the recording will go up right afterwards, so you can share it among your friends and colleagues. Let's get into it, Amy. So how should we define burnout?
Yeah, think of burnout as a response to chronic, unmanaged stress.
Okay.
And really, we can think about it as a mismatch between the external demands of a job and our own internal capacity or our tolerance. And that might come from our expectations, our personalities, and also our values that might not connect with the external work.
So how does burnout manifest itself within people? I should ask, how does it show up? What does it look like? It's different for everybody.
It is different for everyone, but there are essentially 3 ways it could manifest. One is emotional exhaustion, or it could be physical fatigue. The other is cynicism or alienation at work. And the third might be a decrease in productivity. So you might experience some more errors. You might feel like you can't really concentrate as well as you could in the past. Or maybe you're not as creative as you were in the past. All of those things could happen.
Is burnout just caused from being overworked? The work itself is taxing. Maybe there are unreasonable demands, workplace conditions. Is that kind of where that comes from, or what do you think?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I want to talk about the personal side in a minute. But I also want to say that we think about burnout as overstimulation, and it could be that the work itself is cognitively demanding or physically stressful, that kind of thing, certainly.
Yeah.
But also there's this phenomenon called boreout, which is kind of the opposite. It's that you have a lot of monotonous tasks, you're doing a lot of repetitive work, and you feel like you don't really have a purpose at work. So that's a concern as well.
So it could go both ways, right? It could be like volume and intensity, or lack of volume and lack of intensity, right?
Yeah.
It's understimulating, but in the end, it manifests itself as kind of what we think of conventionally as burnout looking like.
Yes.
Are there personality types, are there personal factors or personality types who may be more susceptible to burnout than others? I think I know the answer, but I want to know why.
Yeah, there definitely are. I mean, I said it was this mismatch, and this might not be a surprise, but the research tells us that what we think of as more type A personalities are more susceptible to burnout. People who are more conscientious, more driven, more ambitious, definitely. We see those types. And it also does have to do with our expectations. And people who experience more anxiety might experience the work as more stressful than people who don't tend to be as anxious. So they're at greater risk for burnout. But the other piece I want to talk about, this idea of the work and personal lives, is we're not severed, and We
were talking about this in the hallway before. So there's a show on Apple TV, I think it's called Severance. correct me if I'm wrong, but employees of a company or people in the world can choose to sever their work personalities from their personal lives, and never the twain shall meet, right? You go into work, you check in, and you're only in work mode, not able to recall your personal life, and the other way around, right? So
Yeah. It's awesome,
sounds
right?
enticing.
It sounds great.
Sounds cool,
right?
but
yeah, but
there are some
unfortunately,
drawbacks.
There are some drawbacks.
As we learn pretty
right.
quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
including the fact that we can't do that ourselves. So
But your point is,
right, we
yeah.
do bring our work home,
Yes.
and of course we bring our personal lives to work. So if we're experiencing relationship problems at home, or an illness, or financial problems, or world problems, world events today, that can certainly affect our experience of burnout and make us less tolerant of stress at work. Yeah.
the conventional wisdom or the conventional way of thinking around burnout historically has been that there are ways to manage it, and some of it's good advice, some of it's bad advice. But how have people historically thought about managing burnout or how to prevent it?
Yeah, well, I think the most obvious solution is to just quit your job, which, you know,
do that.
Great. I mean, more
Yeah.
power to you if you can. Not everybody can.
Right.
I don't suggest rage quitting, for example,
Right.
especially if you don't have a new job lined up. That could be really tough
Sure.
today. It could also be that, on balance, it's a good job, even though there are parts of it that you find stressful. So that's not a great one for everyone. Take a vacation, you know, do a spa, go on a retreat. Great ideas too. Short-term solutions to fix the symptoms, not necessarily long-term. And the other one you hear a lot is get therapy, which is great. I think that could be quite useful too, but might not be enough. So we'll talk about some other solutions.
Okay, good. So we're getting into the heart of the conversation, or getting liftoff here.
Yeah, we are.
What we're going to be covering now are the 5 strategies, as promised, for managing burnout, both for individuals and organizations. So what's the first strategy? Where do we start?
I suggest to drop the shoulds and the comparisons. When people feel shame about feeling burnout, people might say, I should be able to cope with this, or they're looking at other people, at their coworkers, and they say, their coworkers are coping just fine, why can't I cope well? It's just not really helpful. It might be true, you know. I mean, certainly you and I could do the same job, and there are going to be parts of it that are going to be a breeze for me and difficult for you, and the other way around. So it's just not really helpful. And my concern as a person in recovery, which is why I wrote the book, is that it leads to isolation. That kind of thinking and feelings about ourselves also lead to addictive behaviors and addictive substances. So instead, we try to practice compassion, self-compassion, to feel like I'm who I am, and sometimes I feel burned out, sometimes I feel stressed, and so does everybody.
Can you tell me about the shame part of it? Or is this like expectations related to capitalism, right? That's sort of baked into the cake. This is how we working hard. Is that what it is?
Well, I think
I'm coming off as maybe an undisciplined worker.
yeah, that could certainly be part of it, and other people might be judging you too, right? I mean, that could happen. So I think we have to watch the shoulds and those judgments of other people. But it also could help us be more compassionate to others in cases where I'm doing fine, but someone else is really struggling.
Yeah, we talked about this in the run-up to in our pregame huddle about, and this is a through line in this conversation, which is always being cognizant that we don't always experience burnout in the same way.
Correct.
In fact, none of us do. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. Good start. Okay, what's the second strategy? Now where are we?
Second one is to pinpoint the actual stressors. So try to get analytical about what is really going on. We have a tendency maybe to say, I hate my job, you know, these global blanket statements, but trying to figure out what is actually going on with both the work and with ourselves can help us figure out what we can and cannot control. So first, to look at the work, I really like the approach of Burnett and Evans. They wrote a book and they have a workbook. It's called Designing Your Life.
Okay.
And I think it's for early career people probably, but I think it could be useful for anyone. And they suggest that you look at your work throughout the day and see, when am I feeling in flow? Like when is everything sort of clicking and time passes, when I'm not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
What energizes me also, and then what depletes my energy, to try to pinpoint, what's really going on. And then to also look at ourselves, right? We said, I mean, no blame, no shame, but still, I mean, I'm who I am. So I'll give a personal example. I'm a novelty seeker.
Yeah.
I want every day in my job to be all new.
Okay.
And, that's...
I get it.
It's not always practical, and so I'm probably more prone to boreout than burnout than some others, and that's on me, and that's how I'm built. I'm not going to change that, and yet I could look at that and see, can I adjust that so I can get on and do my job? So this idea of breaking that all down and then saying, well, what can I control and what can't I control? So I might be able to control the work that I delegate to AI, for example. Maybe that's something I can do.
Yeah.
Maybe I can say no more. We'll talk about that a little bit later, and set some more boundaries. And then for the things that I can't control, like let's take an example that I know a lot of people struggle with: recognition. They don't feel that they have enough recognition at work, and that does lead to feelings of stress and burnout because you don't know that you're doing a good job, and it's frustrating. But I mean, I don't know what to do. What do I do with that? It's like I can't make someone appreciate me. So I use that as an example to say I've got to figure out a way to let that go. There are terrible organizations and terrible jobs and, jerk managers and all the rest, and things that we just really have to accept as they are. And I say that not to minimize those situations that people are dealing with. They're very difficult situations. But for myself, like, to continue railing against something that I can't change is really just causing my own problems. So in my life, I've found it very freeing, and I know a lot of people in recovery and people a little farther along, maybe people who have had some therapy, learn that we just have to accept reality and not get too hung up on it.
It's made me think of the imposter syndrome type thing, right? Where nobody's demonstrating that I hold any particular value to the organization. I'm going unrecognized. So gosh, maybe I'm not all that.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe I don't have all the things. And obviously you can spiral into self-doubt and unproductivity and things along those lines.
Yeah. But that's self-talk, right?
Yes.
And that's something that we really do have control over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one last thing on this, because I do want to revisit this theme because I think it's so absolutely critical, is the idea of, why am I spacing out on this? The idea that, I'm going to let it go.
Just now.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm going to let that one go. Let's jump into the third strategy. I'm going to remember it in a second. We'll revisit it in a few
Okay,
minutes. So
good.
what's number 3 here?
Okay. My discipline is business communication, so of
Yeah.
course I'm going to focus on courage, and that's communicating with courage, that you might need to advocate for yourself.
What does communicating courage courageously look like? What is that?
Yeah, it's taking think of courage as taking action despite risks. It's not recklessness, so we have to take a careful look at what those risks are and managing through them. But it might mean negotiating deadlines, or uncertainty is a big factor in workplace stress, so it might mean asking for clarification about deadlines and expectations and quality of work. Yeah, there's much more in the eCornell servant leader course on courage about this too that might be helpful.
Oh, terrific. And uncertainty is definitely a thing that's in the air, right?
It is.
I think with businesses struggling, shifting economy, a million external factors, Uncertainty can be really disruptive.
Yeah. And I would also, in terms of communicating with courage, test your own assumptions.
Yeah.
Because we might, especially if we are more type A personality, have expectations for ourselves that are not necessarily required in the job. So maybe a frank conversation with a manager about when is this really due and what level of work is really required here.
Yeah.
It also takes courage to ask for help. And I don't think people do that enough. We tend to underestimate sometimes how much other people want to help us. People want to demonstrate their own competency, so that's a great reason to ask someone else for help in addition to getting the help that you need.
Yeah.
And it also makes it possible for other people to ask for help.
And this goes back to when I zoned out just a moment ago. What I really wanted to kind of take us home with was the idea of not being in control. Control what you can, but also resign yourself to the fact that there's so many things at work that you can't control. Recognition among them, sometimes the workload itself, or the stress manifesting itself in some way.
That's right.
Asking for help, having humility, and thinking about things in that way is firmly falls into the purview of things that you can control.
Yeah.
Which is super productive.
Good. I'm
All right.
glad.
Yeah, want to get us back on track there. So number 4.
Good. Number 4.
What's strategy number 4?
Okay. Try gratitude and mindfulness practices. And I'm afraid that people are going to be rolling their eyes out there.
At gratitude and
Yeah,
mindfulness?
particularly, both, but particularly the gratitude thing. And I would have years ago also until I started looking at the research and saw so much strong research about how gratitude improves well-being and helps us manage our stress.
Can you tell me about the research? I wanted to ask you earlier on, but you keep, like a lot of people don't move in this world, right?
Yeah.
Doing research on things like gratitude and mindfulness as it relates to the workplace. Can you talk a little bit about the research?
Yeah.
Whether it's for this book or some of your previous books or courses.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not a primary researcher, so I'm looking at other people's research and making sense of it for audiences. And one example for us here is a meta-study which looked at many, many studies about mindfulness training for nurses. Now, nurses have stressful jobs.
The highest level.
I think so, or close, one of them. Yeah, certainly. So they looked at different kinds of training programs, and they found that nurses who have a mindfulness practice daily or near daily tend to have lower levels of emotional exhaustion. So that kind of research is really helpful to us. It tells us what's possible for us too. So so that's that piece.
You were talking about the research into gratitude and mindfulness.
Right.
Yeah.
So gratitude, and I want to be clear too, I don't mean it like, oh, you should be grateful to have this job.
That's not what you mean?
That's not what I mean.
Okay.
Also, I don't mean this idea of what's called surface acting, which is acting like everything is okay, because that does lead to emotional exhaustion, as you can imagine. Yeah. So toxic positivity, right?
Toxic positivity is a term that's out there in the world, and we both get it.
We both
We've
do
been
get
around
that.
toxically positive people. I've been guilty of it at times. I'm not going to go through an anecdote, but I had a bad one where I was toxically positive.
Yeah. Okay.
So surface action.
So not that.
Not that.
Instead, what we're talking about in terms of a gratitude practice is people journal. Certainly there's a lot of research about that, but just stating what you're grateful for. So I recommend a practice, gather 2 or 3 friends and text each other every day 3 things that you're grateful for. And they can be work-related or not. As you're thinking about those things, just spend a little bit of time reflecting on each and see how you feel after a month.
What did you find?
I find that I feel better, definitely feel better. I'm not fixing my job situation, but it's lifting me up just a little bit. I have a friend who said when I'm really, really depressed, I do some gratitudes, it's like holding a helium balloon. It lifts me up just a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of thing that doesn't cost much, it doesn't take much time. If nothing else, you'll feel connected to these couple of people every day.
Right, and you're being reflective throughout.
Correct.
Always good to
Yeah.
re-examine. So those are the 5 strategy pillars that we just covered there. Let's talk about strategies for oh, I'm sorry, did we hit number 5?
We have one more.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Go
Okay,
ahead.
this one is about re-engaging
Yeah.
with people, and it's particularly for people who feel sort of alienated or withdrawn. We know that loneliness is an increasing problem at work. It doesn't matter, apparently, whether people are working at home or in an office. People feel increasingly lonely.
Sure.
A couple of newer studies are looking at belonging and burnout. People who don't feel that they belong in work are more likely to experience burnout, which kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my suggestion is to reach out to people. Certainly there are things the organization can do to make you feel like you belong, but more and more I'm thinking about belonging as a skill, that you are of service to others, you're helpful to others, people come to rely on you, come to depend on you, and then you belong. You are included as part of the team. I want to say something also about connecting with people to like gossip and complain. And, you know, I did some of this when I was younger in my early career.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are guilty about it, guilty of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a quick fix. You know, it's fun, you complain about people, you laugh, make fun of people, but it tends to keep us into negative spaces. So as I've gotten older, tend to gravitate to more positive people.
Yeah. Can't do nothing but good there.
I think.
Okay, good. Belonging, it was interesting too when we were talking in the hallway again before this, longing to be, it's such it's proactivity.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because belonging to some people feels like a positive thing. Let's make sure that that person feels like they belong.
Right.
But it's a two-way street.
It is. There are things that we can do ourselves to help us feel as if we belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 pillars. Thank you for that. So let's get into strategies for managers and employers rather.
Yeah.
I want to understand this. To what degree should a manager feel responsible for the stress level or burnout within either individuals who are their direct reports or teams? Like, is that a manager's job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say much of it is a manager's job. Again, you said two-way street. You know, we're not always responsible for everyone's mental health. People have to manage their own stress to an extent, but we can certainly set up conditions that are more favorable to people and to notice when people are struggling so we can be helpful to them.
So what would be the ways in which they can improve working conditions? What are some of the first action steps toward that?
Yeah, well, when I think about the actual work, my concern is that we're too focused on individual roles and job responsibilities, job descriptions, instead of looking at the work more holistically for an entire team and thinking, how can I best manage this workload, including AI as part of that team. Now, the caveat about AI is if we're delegating too much of the repetitive tasks to AI, then there is a worry that, you know, what happens? All the cognitively demanding work is left on the humans, and that can cause burnout. So we have to be a little bit careful there. I would also look at how work is distributed and make sure that the people who are, you know, the people you really rely on, the ones that you know will get it done no matter what, aren't too overwhelmed, because that does come at a cost later. You know, I remember even managing people, and yeah, I would probably take advantage of those people and not give work to the people who complained a lot. That's not really fair either.
Right. Yeah.
Also look at work that no longer needs to be done.
Love
you know,
that one.
Yeah, new work comes in, we just kind of pile on, and we don't like think about taking away work. And some of this might require us, the managers, also to demonstrate courage, advocate for the team, manage up, sometimes put the team in front of your own career goals. That kind of thing can be difficult.
Right, the guiding philosophy behind servant leadership, which is not a concept or a construct that's familiar to everybody in the audience. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it is really, there's this follower aspect to it,
Yeah.
that we are leading, but we're really guided by those we lead as well, and that we're prioritizing others above ourselves at times. That's how I see servant leadership.
It makes perfect sense. So let's talk about leadership. So you've taught communication and leadership at Cornell for years. What qualities benefit or befit a leader? What kind of personality should they take on as it relates to demonstrating leadership? Someone who does take burnout seriously.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it, but the communication part is what I'm really curious about.
Yeah,
Explicit.
I would say the prevailing character dimension to focus on is humility.
Oh.
And we think about humility as being equal level to others, neither above or below people. It's a little tricky because obviously we're literally above people on an organizational
yeah.
chart. Right. But I would translate that as not asking people to do the kind of work that we wouldn't be able to do. I don't mean the physical, technical work, but just that we're willing to take on the work that we're asking others to take on as well. Humility is also about making space for people, and particularly for the quieter people on our team. I think we have to make a little bit more space for them. I would suggest check-ins with people that focus not only on work results, which is our tendency, work output, but also talk about the process of work and the workload itself. And some of those are tough conversations, and it does take a humble leader because we don't always want to know the answer, especially if people are having a tough time. But I also think it's okay, and it does take a humble leader too, to say, I'm sorry I can't fix this for you right now. What can I do to help? But this is the situation, and just be there to listen. Also, look for warning signs. Obvious ones, people are absent. Less obvious ones, people might be sarcastic at work. They might make more errors. They might appear to be withdrawn, that kind of thing.
You mentioned the communication aspect to this, how a leader should communicate to a team. What about overarching culture? What about an organization that does take burnout seriously, and it's just built into how we do business? Is that possible?
Yeah, I do think it's possible.
Okay.
I think it has to do with staying close to the team and figuring out what's going on. I think sometimes it's about prioritizing people over profit. That might be a difficult thing at times. Oh, look at you. That's a difficult thing. I mean, these are all balances for sure.
For individuals and managers and leaders, let's send us off. Let's go forth with a positive mindset. You had some really good advice when we were talking earlier about next steps. We've laid out the 5 pillars. We've talked about what managers, employers need to start thinking about if they haven't already.
Yeah.
But any advice as we get moving forward, mindset stuff?
Yeah. And I also wanted to say sort of about the big picture and belonging stuff, that managers can really look at a team holistically and delegate some of these questions, right? Some of these issues to the teams. We know autonomy is a big driver of work satisfaction. So teams can solve some of these problems on their own, and that does develop belonging and contributes to a belonging culture. I also want to just say a quick thing about email, text, Teams, all of that contribute to this. Exactly, and this always-on culture that people already know about, but I don't know, sometimes we just can't seem to figure out a way to distinguish between what needs an immediate response and what can wait. So we're finding that people who check email just in tight windows throughout the day instead of all day long tend to do a lot better. Managers have to be okay with that.
That sounds great. And then there's productivity software, Slack, some of the project management kind of things, which changes the whole dimension. But the always on is probably to some degree, at some places by design.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
I know.
It's explicit, right? If you work at, I don't know, Amazon or something like that, there's always on expectations,
It's true.
things along those lines.
And that's tough, yeah.
Yeah, tell us about your book before we go. We're going to share the URL for this.
Sure. It's Recovery at Work, 12-step principles. And what I found that the kinds of principles that people use to get and stay sober can be helpful in the workplace. And that's this idea, for example, of looking at what I can and can't control and let the things go that I can't control. It also has to do with hope and imagining a better future and taking steps towards that. Program principle expression is one day at a time. It's like just look at today, try not to worry too much about tomorrow, that we don't know what's going to happen, but also to have some patience. You know, it might have taken a while for us to get burned out in our jobs, and it could take some time to feel better again.
Perfect advice. Thank you, Amy Newman, for joining us today, talking about burnout, how to manage it, how to not eradicate it, but how to deal with it when it comes.
Yeah, thank you.
We really appreciate you being on Cornell Keynotes.
Good to talk with you.
Thanks, viewers. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time on Cornell Keynotes. Thank you so much.